Good morning. Good morning, Internet. Well, let's go over this so-called expert crap that CBC News has, supposedly for the power of misinformation, which we all know for a fact that the news likes to be the power of misinformation. But let's listen to what they have to say here.
Well, on this Sunday, we are tracking the second day of protests happening right now in Parliament Hill. Canadians from across the country protesting vaccine mandates, rules and regulations. Now, to that, we've just heard from the Ottawa Police, and they tell us that several criminal investigations are now underway. This is in relation to the desecration of the National War Memorial and the Terry Fox statue. They say...
Okay. So the desecration of the Terry Fox statue and the War Memorial? What about BLM and Antifa and the other far-left extremist protesters damaging the War Memorial last year, tearing down statues? Also, desecration? I don't think so. Draping a flag over a Canadian hero is not disgraceful at all. But it's okay to put a pride flag on the statue, a pride shirt, or any other left-wing propaganda. But as soon as center-minded people or right-minded people do anything, hell just froze over and the left-wingers attack them and demand justice. We don't see the damage with these statues that we did with the left-wingers damaging statues and memorials. They even destroyed churches.
Say they have reports of threatening, illegal and intimidating behavior to police and city workers and other individuals. They say illegal behavior will not be tolerated and will be full.
If you also notice, they're claiming illegal behavior, threatening behavior towards police. We have not yet heard any police officer come forward with any of these allegations themselves. These allegations are coming from city officials and the news only. What we see on the ground from camera footage from the protesters themselves is very peaceful. They're even cleaning up their garbage.
Fully investigated. They are also asking people in Ottawa who have concerns or can report an incident to do so in person. They say they cannot rely on social media to move forward with any investigation. Well, as we track what is happening in the nation's capital today, we're also now reaching out to Timothy Caulfield. He's the Canada Research Chair in Health Law and Policy and professor with the Faculty of Law and School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. So, Tim, thank you for...
Okay, now we're going to listen to this left-wing extremist talk. And I don't think he's really an expert because he's one-sided on everything. You be the judge.
Joining us today, always good to speak with you.
Thanks for having me on.
Listen, I want to get your take here on what we've witnessed so far. What began as a trucker protest against cross-border vaccine mandates morphing into something much larger.
Number one, this was not a trucker protest. This was a freedom protest. The news manipulated it into a trucker protest. This protest was for the freedom of all people in Canada.
What do you see happening here?
Well, first of all, I think it is a representation of the frustration that we're seeing out there. Look, everyone is frustrated with where we are right now with the pandemic, and obviously that's playing a role. Secondly, it really highlights the degree to which this has become about ideology, and sometimes far-right ideology. And I think there's a pretty robust body of evidence to support that. The other thing I think we're seeing right now, people exploiting those two elements. So exploiting the frustration that we all understandably have, and the ideology in order to push particular agendas. And I think some of those agendas, unfortunately, are pretty hardcore, pretty extreme. And lastly, if I may,
Now we can see the mental illness on this guy. The factor he's claiming that these are the extremes. No, they're not. The peaceful protest has yet to see any type of violence or damage done anywhere. This is unlike any left-wing protest, which always causes damages. So, him even calling this a far-right movement is wrong too. Majority of the people that support this are actually centered. Some are liberals, some are Democrats, some are conservatives. It's not a right thing, it's not a left thing. This is a you thing. For the people, uniting the people is what this is about. This is not what these people want you to think. These experts are biased.
I also think, for me, because this is an area that I study, it highlights, unfortunately, the power of misinformation, because so much, of what we hear coming from these protesters from, a scientific perspective just isn't true. And that.
See, now here it is. Another thing this guy is doing, he's portraying his feelings, his emotions onto the protesters and saying what he thinks it's all about. He never asked a protester. He's never been there to talk to them. This expert is nothing more than a liar. This expert needs to grow up and get a life. This expert is biased and should never be used.
I find that incredibly frustrating.
Okay, let's break that up. And I'll begin with what you say here. People exploiting the situation. What people are you referring to? In what way are they exploiting this moment?
Well, you're seeing it really kind of across a continuum. You're seeing legitimate members of political parties here in Canada, and I understand that there, is broad, a breadth of perspectives on this from our own political leaders, and that's good. We should have open debates about, when we should use mandates and what does the science say about mandates. So you are seeing, certain sectors of our own, political establishment using this moment for as a political opportunity, and
I don't see it that way. Our political parties that are supporting this movement believe in freedom. What I see here is somebody who's concerned about his job, the money he's getting from the liberal government to spread misinformation. That is the problem with most universities. Their professors, their experts are paid liberals. They are not there for the best interest of you or me. They're there for their pocketbooks. How many dollars can they put in their pocket? That is why they're doing these types of news conferences. Lying, spreading misinformation, and just trying to divide the country. This is not about right or left. Remember that. This is about us and the government. The government is stepping over their means of control and going into a dictatorship. People want freedom. They don't want that dictatorship. There's many people from other countries that have immigrated to Canada that see what's going on right now, and they're calling it out. Let's continue watching and see what else this person and CBC News is talking about, and how much more misinformation they can spread.
I get that. I don't necessarily think it's great, but I understand it. But at the same time, we've heard about pretty extreme elements too at these protests, not just in Ottawa, but across Canada, right? And people using this sort of moment, to put forward their far-right ideological perspectives, and I worry that that's going to.
He worries about far-right ideology. I worry about the far-left narrative. The narrative that all Caucasians are racist. I don't see that. That all Caucasians are the problem. Also, the narrative that white straight males have some sort of advantage over anybody else. That is absolutely wrong. The people that have the biggest advantage are the ones that scream racism all the time. But let's continue with this left-wing moron talking about right-wing stuff that he knows nothing about, because he thinks being all about freedom is right-wing. It's not. It's about unity, about us, the people, being free from government tyranny.
Gain momentum.
Okay, and to that, we have seen swastikas, upside down Canadian flags, known white supremacists involved in.
Now let's start with the white supremacist stuff here that they're talking about. We've seen video from the ground of freedom fighters pushing these placed liberal actors and forcing them out, calling them out for who they are. Antifa, BLM, and government officials. These news anchors do not do their job. They are not doing any journalism. Remember, the liberal governments are protecting the news. You can't sue the news for slander. They can lie and slander you constantly because they have some sort of protection. We remove that protection from them, then they'll have to do their job properly. So, until that's gone, we cannot trust news organizations like CBC News.
In the organization of what's happening right now. But, there are also, and I would probably argue here that the most people who are here don't identify with those radical elements. They say they're actually just there because they're against mandates and restrictions.
See, now he's finally telling the truth. 99% of these people that are there aren't with these radicals or these fake radicals. Remember, when you look at the pictures, they're in groups of 5 and 10. They don't show the bigger picture of around them. That's because there's no other protesters around. These are isolated pockets of staged photos and videos by the news organization and far left extremists. The great dividers will continue to push and push until this country falls apart.
Is that a voice being heard right now?
I think that's a really good point, and that's of course one of my concerns is that the rhetoric emanating from the anti-vax community and from these hardcore elements is having an outsized.
Also remember, it's not anti-vax, it's anti-mandates. We don't want mandates. The narrative of anti-vax is wrong. Majority of these people have been vaccinated. They just don't agree with the mandates. What a horrible thing to keep saying, CBC News. Always calling these people anti-vaxxers. Despicable, disgusting, horrible news organizations.
Outsized impact on public discourse. That's one of my great fears, actually. But we should take a beat here and remember that most Canadians, by far, support vaccines.
Really? Most Canadians support vaccines? Why is most Canadians supporting freedom? The majority of Canadians support freedom, not tyranny, not mandates. Now, this is more misinformation from CBC News.
Most recent studies have told us that most individuals also support mandates. And there's been some recent research that has shown that even pretty extreme.
Now, if people really supported the mandates, why are there so many people? Why is 50% of Canada in Ottawa right now fighting for our rights? Fighting for our freedom.
Mandates, right? So I think we also need to recognize that. I think I'm a little worried about false balance. Giving sort of too much weight to this kind of protest. There's a very interesting study that came out just last week. My colleague Frank Graves, one of the individuals who coordinated this from Ecos Research, found that there is almost a perfect correlation between believing misinformation, sort of embracing misinformation, and being against these public health measures. And I get it. It's a very...
And again, their experts are their own paid people. They don't have true experts. These people are mental. They're really insane. I have no words for it. The misinformation coming from the news is unbelievable. The lies, the slanders, the misinformation is building up. This is why nobody trusts the news anymore. We don't get real journalism. We don't have real journalists down there talking to the real people. They're going out, finding some paid actor to pretend to be a protester and smear these people. This is despicable, disgusting behavior from news organizations.
Very chaotic information environment out there, but I think that highlights how challenging our communication challenge really is.
Well, let's pick up there because you mentioned the communication challenge. You worry about misinformation. Talk about this protest. Does it signal...
Also, we have proof that there's no misinformation coming from the right or the centered that are right there at the protest, at ground zero right now, fighting for your rights. Fighting for all rights of Canadians. These people are there for you and me. But you also have to remember, what does the Canadian flag symbolize? Does anybody remember? No, because people don't care anymore. Well, the symbolization of hope, peace, tranquility, that is the Canadian flag. But other people recognize it as the nation's value of equality, peace, freedom, welcoming newcomers, welcoming our visitors, our tourists, the pride of our country, and unifying the world. But right now, we don't have any of that. Right now, we have left-wing agenda, which is dividing us, name-calling, bullying, forced mandates, forced medical experiments. This is all stuff that happens in dictatorships. This is the problem with Canada right now. We must fight for our rights, stand up, speak your mind. But remember, all of you that are at the protest right now, if you spot any of these racists, Confederate flag people, Nazi flag propaganda people, take the stuff away from them and burn it. We do not need to be associated with that stuff. Stop it. Get rid of them. Remove them from the protest. Citizens arrest anybody who is causing any type of damage. Document everything. Record everything. Because we know what the news and we know what the government is going to try to do. Another January 6th, like the United States. That is what they're pushing for right now. Don't let it become that. Protect our country by making sure those Antifa goons and the far left extremist terrorists do not cause any damage during this protest. Stop them at all costs. We cannot allow them to manipulate the news into calling the freedom fighters bad guys, terrorists, because they're not. When did it become illegal to protest in Canada? Well, there is more to come later on. Have a wonderful day.